Hi, everybody. Michelangelo Badio here with another installment of No Boundaries.
Joey's here too, and I've been thinking a lot. Too much, but that's not unusual.
Robert, he's angry. And now we are using acoustic today. What I'm going to be playing is the Sawtooth Jumbo Maple 6-string and also the Jumbo Maple 12-string, which is sitting right over here, resting, waiting to shred. Hi, Cynthia. I'll go through some hellos to everybody in a second. I really love these guitars. These are studio quality instruments. Listen to the intonation. They're just really, really great. Hello, Roxana. Let's see who else. Denny, how are you? Your guitar collection's looking better and better. We've got Herman Lee in the guitar competition too. So when he found out that I have, 200 guitars, real close to that, he's on a mission too. So we're kind of a little competitive about that. But I had played with Dragon Force recently, and it was so much fun. Gus G was there, who's a good friend too. He played with Ozzy. He's in Firewind, and also a new band called Seven Spires, a young band. They're not brand new, but with a guitarist named Jack Costo, which I've known since he was a kid. Now he's taller than I am, and I'm tall. And but he's a great young guitar player, and the band is really awesome. Also, too. So let's see. I've said hello to Tanya. I'm saying Alexis. I've got everything written down. I saw Denny, Brett, Nick, Roxana, and then Sasha as well. Roberto, Paul. I see Mona Gray, and I know her as another name, Jenny. And so, but I'm really happy to be here now. And I had a really cool afternoon. My mom has been gone for a while now, which many of you know that follow my career. So, I'm pretty much alone in the close family thing. No sister, younger sister, but I was hanging out with my cousin. Now, she and my mom are the same age, so she's about 87 years old, and she actually drove to my house, and then and she's she loves my guitar collection, and she's seen me play a bunch of times, but it was pretty inspiring to see somebody that age, that coherent, and can get around, can drive, and and plus I'm related to her, which never hurts. So I think somewhere in the genes, it's I'm hoping I hope for all of you, when we get up to that kind of age, that we're all mobile too. Now, what I wanted to talk about, I wanted to pick up from last week about Speedkills and Hughes Acoustic. Now, let me tell you the setup that we did today. We made it really easy. I've got a microphone here. It's a condenser mic. And when I record acoustics in the studio, there's two ways to do it. One is to use a mic. You can use multiple mics. Usually, sometimes we have them like here, and it gets very intense. I'm gonna try this too. I have a bunch of picks here. It's amazing the difference in guitar picks. And I'm using my signature Chromacast pick, and it's like a Jazz 3, only more metal. But getting back to the acoustic, this is a really, really nice sounding guitar. It's a Jumbo Maple, and if you can look at the wood of this bad boy here, look at the wood on that thing. It's just incredible. It's so nice. Look at those flames. That's bad, dude. It's bad, dude. But what I love about it too, two things. When you listen, I was talking about the signal chain. I apologize. The signal chain is, we can do miking, but you have to know how to mic it because you get phase issues. There's, micing's an art form, and it's not easy to mic an acoustic and make it sound good. That's one. Or you can go direct. This is a Fishman preamp system. So we chose to do the easy way today and go direct. And what I did is instead of going through like a bunch of stuff, like for example, I love Yngwie's acoustic sound. He compresses the heck out of it. I don't at all. I like, and I think a lot of guitar players now don't use that kind of compression because they're... It's just a normal, natural sound. But what we did is once we plugged it in, then I added a reverb on the DAW system. And, it's not anything special. It's not some lexicon or anything, just one that's stock in the program. And so I have a direct acoustic. You're hearing a little bit of it through the condenser as well. So you get a little bit of both. But it just made it easier for the live stream. So this is how we're going to play this. Now, when I play acoustic, I love to do, I love doing finger style, but I also came up with this weird idea. See, I was so into a guitar pick when I was a kid. Death to all that didn't use picks! Death! That's how I kind of felt. And so I used a guitar pick because this is the weapon of the shred gods. In the heavens, the gods said, let there be picks, pointy, stiff, and this is what you will use to slay in the realm of the shred lords. And so I thought to myself, I like guitar picks. And I didn't want to, when I was in college, they offered classical guitar, and this is the reason I didn't play classical guitar. And I was a jaded, 19, 20, 21-year-old, and then turned 22 when I graduated. I used to see these guys, and it's mostly guys at that time. It's a lot different world when I was going to school than it is today. And they're on those little footstools, and they're playing it. And they're playing like this, and I thought, you look stupid, and you look stupider than stupid. And I'm like, stupid. Ain't gonna get no chick sitting there going, I love you. I have so much feeling in my playing. So I said, I cannot play like this. So what I did was, I started using my own type of technique where I used my fingers and a guitar pick. And I did that in the song called A New Day. And here's one of my favorite parts. I love that. It's like I'm not going to sit in the hallway and look like one of the guys in my classes. I'm telling you, when I was in college, I used to see it, just guy after guy. They're like, I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't handle it. And so it was just a look. And, call me vapid. Call me a lot of things. But I just said, and the other thing was my picking technique was really down. And so, but I love playing acoustic guitar. Now, what does this have to do with today's lesson? Because I wanted to talk a little bit more about Speed Kills because, I really am proud of what I've done on instructional programs. And I'm proud of what Doug Marks has done too, because he really does outstanding lessons and the highest quality lessons. And one of the things that I love about playing acoustic, especially using a guitar pick, because, a lot of times... know what I mean? It sounds like, there's so much going on today. And believe me, I love that style. But there's something still that's one of the hardest things to do on guitar: alternate pick. And so what people rely on today, tapping now is more prevalent in guitar than it's ever been. And there's so many great people that tap. This is, and it's not a criticism, it's a critique of tapping. One of the things that it does is it makes you sound like every other tapper. It's very, very difficult to come up with, if you hear 20 guys that are ripping using tapping, it's very difficult to discern who is who. Now, that's not that's not a criticism, it's an observation, because it's a very valid technique. I love it, and I use it. But when you hear a person with a pick, now granted, if it's Eddie Van Halen tapping, that's a different thing, because there's always going to be that one person that shines out, that stands above the rest. I mean, it just happens. Van Halen is unique unto himself. Just like Zakk Wylde using EMG pickups. I like EMG pickups, but it's very difficult to get your own sound using those. They have their sound. And for guitar players who don't have that tone in their fingers or are don't practice that much, you get a good sound. But it's not your sound, it's the company sound. And Zakk Wylde just rips and tears those pickups. He sounds like Zakk Wylde. He's the only one I know. I can't think of virtually anyone else that uses EMGs that you can say, wow, that's their sound. But conversely, Steve Vai and Eric Johnson, John Petrucci, look at me with these sad face EQ, low bass, low treble, a lot of mids. And so the plectrum was so important to me, even when I played acoustic guitar. And I also practiced the techniques of speed kills on acoustic. But I'm going to just play. I just want to show, like, for example, this is one of my songs. Now, I don't use a capo. I love capos, especially when you play high. I mean, listen how in tune that is. It's just a beautiful acoustic. Now, I've tuned a concert pitch too. Now, when I use a guitar pick, ultimately, where do you put your hand? If you have a free-floating system, you can put it. Okay, so I don't know what somebody's saying, but anyway, I was reading a couple of comments, but I'm not going to comment because I don't know the whole story. But I know the whole story on these acoustics. I've been playing acoustic guitar for a long time. I've written a lot of songs on acoustic when I was in Nitro. See, when I played this, other guitar players might do fingerstyle. Not moi. I used a pick. So what I did is I used my pick and simulated, when I played the song Long Way From Home from Nitro, virtually every note was worked out. It wasn't just some random playing. So I knew, and there were some great chords. get a lot of expression. Somebody asked what gauge strings do I use on acoustic. These are 11s, so I don't remember the bottom string, maybe a 50, 46, something like that, but the first string is an 11. On electric, I like 9 to 42s. Sometimes I use 10 to 46s if it's really dropped. But so you get this just beautiful sound. And I'm not telling everybody to play like Mikey, but what I'm saying is that I was so much of my style relies on the plectrum. And just because tapping and everything is in vogue right now, I think they are useful tools. But you also have to ask yourself, who are you? What are you? What do you do? So as much as I love to tap, I love to use the plectrum. And so I've incorporated that in my style across the board. And so I'm not really trying to compete against other guitar players that tap and use the guitar, and I think they're amazing. I'm just trying to be the best MAB I can be. But when you heard that song Long Way From Home, like, every note was worked out. And then I had like, and when I was a kid, we used to write, like, I used to come up with all these different types of tunes, like, for example, that. A New Day, that. I wrote that when I was 16, and I've always wanted to play it, and I did it. Yeah, Dust in the Wind, it's great. Somebody asked what kinds of picks I use. Hey, JD, yes, A Long Way From Home. They're the Chromacast jazz-style pick, and it's a 1.3 millimeter. They're really great. They're really pointy. They're kind of like a Jazz 3, but with this type of pick, it's Delrin. And so it's really brittle, but it's got a brighter sound than a jazz pick, and so it's made for a little more metal. Other things like this, it's in 5/4 time. And see, I orchestrate things. For example, I have this riff. It's on a song of mine on the album Intermezzo, and it's called I Pray the Lord. And I got the idea from Mr. Vai and how he had, For the Love of God. So I thought, well, I can do that too. And I like God. And so what I thought was to come up with this idea of really melodic. And if you listen to some of my later solo albums, like the early days, I always had the overdriver on, and believe me, I'm not trying to cut down myself, because I wrote No Boundaries like that and a lot of other really good songs. But I find as I've gotten older, I have a lot of breaks, and it's almost jarring. And so I'll stop just right in the middle of like, and I like it, but it creates space. I mean, it's like nobody sings like, and keeps going and going and going, unless you're Jim Gillette. He can do that. But what I found when I wrote my own music and used acoustic, I just gravitated, again, I just used my strength, and my strength is Robert. And it's to use this pick. And I've done so many sessions over the years, TV commercials, radio commercials, jingles, different companies. And one of the things that they really liked about the sound of my guitar is when I played acoustic using a pick. Because it really cut through, and I could copy violin lines, and so it made it where it was a sound that sounds very pleasing in the studio. And then I'll talk a little bit about how it relates in Speed Kills. But let's, for example, this. Then underneath it, I had the bass line. And then I would go to the third. Now, so there's two unique parts. So you have one part. And then, somebody says only Chris Impellitteri does these. Well, evidently not. Okay, so then above that, I have a melody going. And so you have all this orchestration going on, and that's how I hear it in my head. I hear orchestrations versus the one style that does all on guitar. And so this pick came in so, everyone can hear it. And I'll play the 12th string. Now here's how you can relate this to Speed Kills. I'm going to say unequivocally that Speed Kills is probably, if you want to learn how to get faster and just learn pure technique, it's still one of the best ones that's ever been done. And I'm not trying to blow my own horn on this. I did the research for you, and I did it for me too. I'm a student of history, and I know a lot about the past, which doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes in the present, because nobody's perfect, but it means that I understood what came before me. And I also realized too that, criticisms from, the pundits, it's never worked in the past, and it doesn't work today. That doesn't mean that people don't make valid observations, because, like, for example, when I did one of my programs, Tribute to Randy, I didn't turn the Marshall stacks on because I didn't use them. I had a little combo amp. It was a 212 Marshall, I think it was called 65 or 120. It was a 212 Marshall amp. It was a valve state. And I had it off to the side, but I figured, man, these stacks are going to blow my brains out. I actually did Tribute to Randy right where I'm sitting now. The amps were behind me. And it was just, I'm not going to use Marshall stacks to, a meter behind me and blow my own brains out. There's other ways to kill yourself. And so, but what I did was I put the amp off to the side. Well, a lot of people noticed that. And I'm like, fair observation, bro, and broettes. So, yes, that's my politically correct term for today. It's gender non-specific. It's broette. Yes, you're a bro, but what kind of bro are you? I don't know. You're a bro or you're an et. I don't know. So we just cover all the bases. So anyway, I don't want to be political because politics has nothing to do with music. It has nothing to do with me going. But what I do is I practice the exercises in Speed Kills. For example, in Speed Kills, short exercises. I've talked about this before, but I cannot, if I said it a million times, I need to say it 1,000,001. You work on short exercises to increase your technique and your playing dexterity. And so I haven't used those two words together, but really that's what it is. It is dexterity. It's being able to, balance on guitar, to put your hands together in sync. And so just something like this. Okay, alternate picking. Bro dude are non-gender. No, not bro dude. That's two guys. Broette. Male, female. Okay, so. And so when I practice this. Now, I position my fingers on the guitar. A lot of guitar players don't, but there's two disciplines, and about half do, half don't. See, that's like this. That's the other technique. But so I love this way of playing. Listen how in tune that is. These guitars are truly beautiful. And one of a big compliment I got recently was, how were you able to, 2 years ago, nobody had heard of Sawtooth, and all of a sudden everybody knows Sawtooth. And, I was saying it's a combination of things. One, you have to have great instruments, because people sometimes, and again, this just people, and some people just don't want to be win-win. They want win-lose. I'm win-win. If I win, you win. If I tell you honestly about a technique, you win and I win, because you have helped me become a better guitarist. Because if I'm completely honest with you about what I do, how I do it, and I've been around so long and it still works so good. You know how much I practiced today? I didn't practice at all. I couldn't. I had my, elderly, octogenarian cousin over all afternoon, and we were just talking about a lot of stuff and looking at guitars. And she knows a lot about my mom, and when they were kids, they grew up together. They were like sisters. They were close cousins, and it was so it's fun. We talk about the past. We were talking about everything from World War II, because she was a little girl in World War II, and how it equated, with all this stuff going on in the world today. It was just really interesting and fun. And because she's a family member, she is my second cousin. Okay, so it's a close relative, but her and my mom were here, and I'm here related to her. And so, but, it was just great, and we, I make time for my family when I can. And, I always try to devote 100% to whatever I do. And, and with the acoustic guitar, with these Sawtooth guitars, one of the things that I'm really proud of is that everybody knows the name that plays guitar now, or most of the people. I can't say everybody, that's 100%, nothing's 100%, but it starts off with great guitars. Look at the wood on these guitars. Look at this. It is incredible. And so, but it's got a Fishman preamp system in it. Look at that flame. The flames are incredible. And it's beautiful inlays, Grover tuners, Fishman preamp system, but they have something that virtually I'm not going to say every company, but most companies do not. The owners are passionate about it. There's multiple owners of the company. There's multiple divisions of the company. They run this thing like you would not believe. Their warehouse facilities gigantic, bigger than my former company, but they know how to manufacture. See, a lot of times you get a prototype of a guitar, and it's like, dude, this rules, bro. You get the sample, as they call it. And then all of a sudden the production model comes in, and it sucks. The neck, you should get in baseballs with the neck, bro. The sound sucks. And just everything about it's wrong, because the factory's got your order. Now, every big guitar company, big ones, have to have manufacturing to produce the amount of instruments that are people want. That's just the way of the world. But the difference between Sawtooth and almost everybody else is how close they monitor the manufacturing. I mean, everything from screws, every little detail on these guitars is something that Sawtooth goes over. So when you get a guitar like this, I have to admit, my former guitar company, it's no criticism to them. I never could use their acoustics in the studio. I just couldn't. They weren't good enough. They didn't sound good. They were thin, but listen to the low end here. There's two ways to, there's two criteria that I look for immediately on an acoustic. Low end. The first thing you listen to is low end. If it's lacking, your guitar's sucking. And so when you hear a beefy low end, like an old Martin or something like that, that's, I've known this since I was a teenager. I used to play these old Martin guitars at a music store that I worked at, the Music Gallery in Highland Park, and one of the guys that worked there had this beautiful old Martin. And I remember listening to it and hearing this booming bass and going, I've never heard acoustic sound like that. And so that's first, Sawtooth has it. Then secondly, intonation. Now, I have not touched my tuner pedal. I'm going to all I'm using is a tuner here. Now I'm in concert pitch. I'm looking right now. Everything's still perfectly in tune. And so when you get intonation like that, you know they're manufacturing it correctly. And so you have low end and you have intonation. Those are the first two things I look for, because sound can be manipulated. I can add a little more bass, a little more treble. Although it won't make it sound amazing, I can make it sound good. But if you have that low end and you have intonation and you add tone to it, you have the trifecta of wrath, the trifecta of death. I'm going to just play a little bit. One of my songs, it's called Dreaming of 1986. Now, I used a capo on the album. I'm not going to use a capo. And here is the song down in this is in concert pitch. It's not tuned out. And then I'm going to play the 12 string. But I really like this song because when I was in Nitro, we used to go up to Topanga Canyon, and we lived in Woodland Hills. We were an LA band. I lived in LA for many years, and we had this tree in Topanga. It's kind of the foothills of the mountains, and it's kind of quasi desert, but there's trees. Some can grow, and so we had this tree called the music tree, and I would just go there and play, and then I'd bring a cassette and record, and we would work on songs, but a lot of times I just go by myself, and I was goofing around, and I have all these different tapes of me playing back then acoustic, and when I was goofing around, not goofing around, but when I was working on my last album, More Machine Than Man, I was required by the record company to write 13 new songs, which I did. I've written hundreds of songs. But so I released 13 new original songs on my last record. And I wanted to do an acoustic. And I was like 3, 4 in the morning. And I started goofing around with this. And I just came up with the song and recorded it. It was like one take. I didn't use the recording that I did to write the song, then I re-recorded it, but I actually wrote this just all at one time. I just put the DOS system on record and went. So it goes like. do this all day. What does this have to do with Speed Kills? It's really difficult if you're used to electric to play acoustic. So it's just got a beautiful sound, and I'm using the pick in an acoustic format, but I'm still using the techniques that I taught on Speed Kills. I'm using alternate picker, I'm using economy picking up. Even when I played No Boundaries. Somebody said play Voodoo Child. Okay, an acoustic. Now I don't have a wah set up, so I'm going to simulate the wah. I did this on stage once because I was. That's another thing. I didn't buy into the idea of using a wah for that sweet spot. You know, like you can go wah, 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 wah. Sounds like Joey. Okay. Wah, 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 wah. And so a lot of people love using wahs, but what they do is they find, you know, because a wah really is a sweep of EQs, like wow. So it sweeps through an EQ. And like, for example, a crybaby is more of a narrow bandwidth where you get some that are wow, but you really don't want that. You kind of want it narrower. Wow, wow. So it goes from low to high frequencies, and that's what gives you that wah sound. I didn't have a wah, and we did Voodoo Child, and I was actually, believe it or not, in Israel doing this, my one and only time playing there. So I had the whole audience. I said, please, can you help me on this Voodoo Child? Because, see, I'm an elitist, I'm a jazz aficionado, so we don't use wahs and jazz unless we're going. Who's the sex machine with all the chicks? Shaft. Can you dig it? People know that. If they know that, wow, it was a huge hit song. Like, who's that sex machine with all the chicks? Shaft, you damn right. And so, but I love that. I had to play that song in high school, and I'm like, I had really long hair and I looked like a girl, and I tried to grow sideburns, but I only had 3 hairs sticking out, but they were long, and so I used to try and like make the most of them. And so, but I used to play that, and I had this old Fender fuzz wah. One thing you press fuzz, it actually says fuzz. I've got one upstairs in my pedal collection, my vintage. I have a lot of cool vintage pedals. The other one says wah, and it had the wah up and down and a volume pedal. It had fuzz, wah, and volume that scooped this way. It was bad. And so I'm like, now if I had a wah, it would sound good. I swear to God, it would sound good. But so what I did with Voodoo Child, yes, I do sound like Thurston Howell. Because I think, yes, I'm a jazz elitist. Somebody wrote that. Yes, I think that what I think is pure. What I think is jazz. Jazz is the only way, unless you listen to classical music with Bartok and Beethoven and Mozart. And so we are the elitists. We know more than you because I don't know why, because we think we know. But we are the elitists, so rock and roll shred. What does that mean? Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, John Petrucci. That's not music. That is just fast noise. Not even David Gilmour's music. That's blasphemy! No, we're talking about Charlie Christian. We're talking about Joe Pass. And so, you know what I say to those people? Shut up! And I'm goofing around, but yeah, I think about this. It's like, don't you know who I am? Don't you know? And like, no, and I don't even care who you are. And so the point is this, the wah. So here's how I would play Voodoo Child on acoustic. I'm standing next to a mountain, shouting down with the edge of my hand. I love that song. Yeah, I love it. Stormtrooper. I don't know Nugent solo, but I know. And see, just things like that. Now I'm going to switch to 12 string. It's time to bring out, okay. Yeah, somebody said I sound like George Benson a little bit. I love George Benson. He's one of my all-time favorite guitar players, and I got to meet him. And so we were on a first-class flight. I have over 1 million miles on a United Airlines, so I'm a lifetime status flyer. It's actually 1.2 million. And believe it or not, that's not even close to, other people that have 5, 10 million albums. But somebody said play Little Wing. Now I haven't actually. Tuning 12 strings is not fun. But I'm gonna see if I can play Little Wing on a 12. Try it one more time. Okay, I have to think because I'm reading this. Here we go. it just sounds great. I mean, I'm telling you, these guitars rule. You know, people at first, when I said, you know, I'm going to Sawtooth Guitars, they're like, you know, some people thought Dean, you know, kicked me out or something. Look I love Dean Guitars. The owner died. He was a good friend. He was a close friend, a family member. I didn't agree with the new regime. That's all there was. I don't have any animosity towards the current company. It wasn't for me. You know, times change when, you know, it's when new people move in and you know, when you're used to working with a certain group of people, you have a choice. You either adapt to the new group or you leave. Well, I decided to leave because I really love working with the people at Sawtooth. They're just brilliant. They're passionate. They're musicians. You know, I don't want to say, you know,
Run by musicians for musicians.
because that implies to me a bunch of dummies. All right, you know, I know a lot of musicians who don't know anything about business, and so that's because they ain't musicians full time. And I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying that most musicians, you know, have other jobs. Well, with Sawtooth, it's just completely different. They're a California-based company. They think differently in everything they do. I was blown away when I first met everybody. But I believe in the company and I believe in the guitars. Look at the wood on this bad boy. It's another maple masterpiece. And so, but I mean, I spent, 30 seconds tuning it. But listen, just a... I wrote a song when I was at that music tree in Topanga Canyon. It went like this. I used a little bit of it in 1986, but... And I love this. I use this in A New Day, just this motive right here. You can take A New Day and listen to 20 unique motives. I mean, just think of that. You're looking at a TV commercial and wine comes up. Iago Sangria. Provocative, yet not overbearing. And so, or this. Another motive. Or I went at the, I loved that. There are so many different things in the music that I write that it's sometimes, see, I write different than most instrumental guitars. Probably Joe Satriani would be the closest. And the reason I say that is because he has always a melody, like even this. Now, I wrote that with a great guitarist, one of my best friends named Mark McNally. That's actually a riff that he came up with, and then I embellished that and created 8 Pillars of Steel. And you know, and I work with just great people and really talented. But one of the things that I do when I write is I have like a verse, pre-chorus, chorus, but my solo sections, I just love to go off. And you know, Rainforest is a perfect example. You know, I mean, you know. And then, you know, the chorus. solo section. I just went off. And so I like to write like that. So my music is different because a lot of times, and I love instrumental music and guitar music. A lot of times guitar players will look at a verse and a chorus and it's almost like an exercise, which I think is amazing. I don't hear it like that. I hear songs, even my instrumental music, like, for example, full force on, like we're... the record, it's instrumental, but I'm gonna play you a little bit of my original version of Full Force. You get the idea. Now, let's summarize all this. One of the things I forgot to say too, Metal Method and Doug Marks are, we're super close. We're like family. And, I've worked with him forever, since the very first Speed Kills. We have a really cool website. It's learn2shred.com. Learn-to-shred. And so we've put together a brand new website, brand new ordering system. Everything's downloadable, super high definition. But the techniques work. And this is, I'm not trying to make excuses. You know how much I played before this live stream today? We just did a check. I didn't get a chance to practice. I was hanging out with my octogenarian second cousin, and she's amazing, and listening to stories of the family, because, a lot of people are in hard times right now. And, it's a very volatile world. But she was talking to me. Her family had what's called a dry goods store. And it was in business for like 60 years. And she was telling me about World War II, about, they were kids and they were rationing everything. And that her dad used to write down things that he gave to his different customers in case they came and tried to order too much. Like, how people hoard nowadays? Like when COVID, they hoarded everything. My relatives wouldn't allow that. They said they actually wrote down what people got so they could distribute it to everybody, that somebody didn't come in and order and buy 20 shirts where nobody had any shirts. It was just really cool. And it just puts things in perspective for me. Like, you know, we're always in volatile times on this planet. You know, I mean, if we were 100 years ago, what, the Civil War, was that cool? Or the 100-Year War in Europe? Or the Black Plague? Well, that's pretty metal, bro, so that might have been kind of cool. But the point is that, you know, it's how you deal with it. And what I do is I just play music. I get immersed in it, and, you know, I stay positive, and I just truly believe that things will get better. And I love playing Sawtooth guitars, and I love working with Metal Method. Also, too, I just released the it's the ET Hybrid playthrough, and it's on my YouTube page. It's also, you can find it on the Sawtooth YouTube page too, but it's really killer. Because what I did is I used every single tone. I have one for the ES series too. In other words, the 3 single pickup, and there's like 20 something sounds, 23 or 24. I actually plotted out which sounds I was going to use in different parts and switched in one take. Now, you know, and you can see in one time, I almost got confused. I was like, where am I? But I left it because it's real. And I think that's, if you get anything, when you see these live videos, I mean, Speed Kills, it was analog. That was an analog linear editing. There's no way to cheat on that stuff. And so, you know, it was real, it's in your face. And I love to play like that. But I can't say enough about Sawtooth guitars. We have an app. It's the Goatee PS Music Live app. You know, we have all these great things in place to help you. You know, the guitars are just amazing. You know, I mean, the more that I play the instruments, the more that I love working with the company, because it blows me away that they can make guitars this good, but they're so good at manufacturing, they can charge a decent price for you. And, you know, things have gone up outside of our control. One of the things that has heavily affected prices is shipping. And, you know, I mean, it's supply chain. You hear this all the time, but it's affected every industry, including the guitar industry. So, you know, if a container costs X amount of dollars, well, now it costs 5 times as much to ship the same amount of guitars. That's got to affect somewhere. And so, you know, we're dealing with some very volatile economic times, but Sawtooth is still keeping the prices good and keeping guitars in stock. Anyway, this was a long one tonight because I was just into playing, and you know I'm into it when I start to sing. Thank you very much for Joey, yes, Robert, and Michelangelo Badio. See ya.